Thank you very much, Eddie. Can I start by thanking Joe Mulholland and the organisers of the MacGill Summer School for inviting me here today. Not only is this the first time that I have spoken at a summer school, in fact, it's the first time that I've ever attended a summer school, which is a very poor record for somebody who was a councillor for 6 years. But I'm very pleased to be here. I understand that the function of a politician that comes to a summer school is to say something radical. Hopefully it will be picked up by the media and they'll present it as an erudite contribution. I suppose I also follow in the footsteps of a number of distinguished members of the Irish political establishment who have been here during this week. I refer, of course, to Eoin O'Brien and Leo Varadkar and Richard Boyd Barrett. They were here and made some radical contributions, I'm aware. I noted that Eoin made a radical contribution suggesting that perhaps in 5 years the leadership of Sinn Féin may change. Indeed, a radical proposal. And Leo was here. He presented himself as moving from neocon to Corbynista, suggesting that social welfare rates should be linked to inflation. People very unfairly suggested that that may be associated with Leo's leadership ambitions. I think that would be very, very harsh. However, if it was the case that it would improve his leadership ambitions, I would suspect that Leo would advocate that we should link social welfare rates with the salaries of Premiership footballers. But anyway, listen, it is an honour to be here, and it is very important, I think, that politicians do take time to consider carefully policy issues, and that's the advantage that a summer school provides. Because a lot of the time, politicians, my assessment is time is taking up with considering how do I get elected, how will I get re-elected, and what do I have to be careful about doing in order to ensure that none of those factors are affected. We do not have enough time in Ireland, in my respectful submission, to consider policy issues. One of the advantages of being asked by Joe Mulholland to be here today is that I did consider what type of reform I would like to see in Garda Síochána to ensure that it becomes a more modern, efficient and effective police force. Obviously, I can't cover every area here today, but I just wanted to give you some of my reflections in respect of it. One of the things that you note, and I know that Eddie was talking about tribunals of inquiry and reports, is that there have been a series of tribunals of inquiries in this country. There have been 30 tribunals of inquiry since 1922. 6 of them have concerned conduct by An Garda Síochána. Only one other group of people have exceeded An Garda Síochána in having tribunals of inquiry, and I'm not going to give you any medals for guessing who they are. It's politicians. But in terms of tribunals of inquiry, and we now have commissions of investigation, one of the downsides is that the discussion in the aftermath of those reports is always framed in the context of what was in that report. And all the discussion is about how do we respond to this. And unfortunately, you don't get a proper opportunity to consider in the broad view, well, what do we need to do in order to improve An Garda Síochána and to make them more efficient? I did, however, come across a report written a long time ago, back in the 1960s, by Judge Charlie Conroy, and I know Conor Brady played a part in that report, but it was on the remuneration and pay of An Garda Síochána. But the reason it interested me was because it contained a lot of very useful and succinct analyses as to what is the function of a member of An Garda Síochána and what do we as a society want to see delivered by such members of An Garda Síochána. If I could just read out one or two of the findings of Judge Conroy from what is back in 1960, January 1960. But he said in respect of the function of a member of An Garda Síochána that the primary function of a policeman, it was rather sexist then, obviously he didn't refer to a Bangardi, but the primary function of a policeman is to maintain law and order and to protect the persons and property of the general public. That is done by preventing crime, by detecting any crime that's been committed and securing that the offenders are brought to justice, and in the less serious cases by deciding whether a prosecution should be instituted and by carrying out these prosecutions in many cases. Apart from these basic functions, the policeman provides a public service by befriending any person who needs help and assisting in any emergency which may arise. And I think the last part is particularly instructive when you consider what it is that the Irish people want from their police force. They want protection from crime. They want crimes that are being committed brought to the prosecutorial authorities, and they want to ensure that in the policeman they have a friend, somebody they can turn to in crisis or emergency, or who will be with them just in times of their local community. Irrespective of what is contained in very many reports, we need to have policemen on the ground to achieve that function. and numbers of Gardaí on the ground is a very important matter, notwithstanding the fact that you may think it is a simplistic political analysis. It is very important. Another aspect of a policeman's job that we sometimes don't consider, but which was referred to by Judge Conroy, was that the functions that a policeman have and the powers that he have, they don't derive from his superiors. Most of us who have jobs, we're directed by our superiors as to what to do. A Garda is in a different position because his functions and his powers derive from statute. A Garda who just takes over and is in his first year has the powers that are afforded to him by law, and he can exercise those powers without any recourse to his superior. And I suppose what that means in many respects is he's responsible, unfortunately, for any error of judgment in the exercising of it. And one of the factors that was instructive from the O'Higgins report, for those of you who read it, you will note that a lot of the failings and gross inadequacies by an Garda Síochána in respect of offences committed in Cavan Monaghan were that there was probationer or young Gardaí who simply didn't carry out their functions or their duties. And on one level you can say, well, that's their fault because they exercise the powers of their job, but they do have a requirement to be adequately supervised. It is not fair to young Gardaí to put them into the job without adequate supervision. And of course, what they also stated in the report, what Judge Conroy said, was that by his training and background, a policeman should play an active and effective part in community activities. Not only must a policeman be fair and impartial, but must appear to be so. To preserve this fairness and impartiality, he must retain a certain detachment. He must take care not to get too intimately connected with any section of the community. One thing that Judge Conroy in his report also noticed, and this was in 1970, the report was produced, he referred to how at that time there had been huge changes in society. And because of the then huge changes in society, there had to be changes in the way Gardaí were trained. He said that there had to be greater expertise and greater training for an Garda Síochána. Now, if you compare the changes we've had in our society in the past 20, 25 years, it is even more the case that now we are not doing a service to the public or to an Garda Síochána unless we improve and increase the training of an Garda Síochána and education of an Garda Síochána for the purpose of carrying out the very important and complex tasks they are asked to carry out by us. I think it's important that we reflect on some of the complexity of the work that Gardaí are required to do. And I've just referred to 3 examples here, if I can. The first is, if you consider the increasing complexity of certain financial crimes, in order to be able to properly investigate certain financial crimes, a Gardaí, in my opinion, must have a very detailed knowledge of company law, must have a very detailed knowledge of forensic accounting, and must be able to understand how the business in which the alleged white-collar crime took place operates. Now, that is a hugely specialised area, and we do have training in the Garda College in respect of it, but we do not provide adequate resources in respect of the education and training of our Gardaí in order that they can deal with complex financial crime. Secondly, if you look at the use of the internet in crime as against children, again, in order to be able to adequately investigate that, you need to be an expert in computers and information technology. Again, that expertise needs to be built into an Garda Síochána. It is there, but we need to do more to provide for the training and the increased training of the Garda Síochána. And finally, as an example, we have historic complaints. Historic complaints were probably not that common back in 1970, but they are a more recent occurrence. And each Garda, I suppose, needs to have some psychological understanding or understanding of psychology as to why it is persons can legitimately delay in bringing complaints to the Gardaí or to the prosecutorial authorities until a long time has elapsed. All of those 3 examples illustrate that a Garda really requires expertise. It is a profession. It is something that requires the knowledge of law of a barrister, the knowledge of forensic accounting of an accountant, the knowledge of information technology of an information technology expert. And we need to figure out for ourselves, how do we improve the collective knowledge and expertise of an Garda Síochána? And the way we need to do that, in my opinion, is we need to concentrate on training and education. And if I could just give you a couple examples of this. I know that many members of an Garda Síochána have degrees, 3rd-level qualifications, which make them expert for the work that they are doing. However, we need to encourage members of An Garda Síochána who are in the job and who are going through their development to seek and obtain extra third-level qualifications. We need to progress them on the basis that they have got these extra advantages, these extra educational qualifications. That will send out the message that expertise and excellence within An Garda Síochána is very important and it is rewarded. And as I say, we should have Gardaí who have been recruited, who are then supported by the force, paid by the force to do expert third-level education in, for instance, forensic accounting or information technology or psychology or in the whole area of domestic abuse. So we need to develop professional educational training more within An Garda Síochána. And I know there are very many members, excellent members of An Garda Síochána, who have third-level degrees. We need to encourage more of them to do it, and we need to benefit those who do secure it. A second and more controversial proposal in respect of how we can improve expertise and education within An Garda Síochána is to provide a mechanism where graduates are given some benefit through entry to An Garda Síochána. Now, I'm not suggesting that somebody who has a degree or a master's in forensic accounting should immediately be able to get in superintendent level. But what happens in a lot of other countries is that a lot of third-level graduates who want to join An Garda Síochána or have to join the police force are allowed to join. They join at the same level as everyone else joins, but provided they pass specific tests and show an ability to be a functioning Garda, they are given faster promotion. We need to recognise that there are a lot of people in this country who have secured degrees, who are in their mid-20s and who want to join An Garda Síochána. It is a very interesting profession and a job. Now, I know people will say, but sure, of course they can join. All they have to do is they go down, they go through the same process as everyone else. The reason why they don't, or many of them don't join, is because the system does not give any recognition or advantage to the fact that they have a third-level degree in a specific area that may be beneficial to the work of An Garda Síochána. I think that's an area that we need to progress. There's a huge number of people out there. When you think about it, I know there was a recruitment ban in An Garda Síochána, but when they were recruiting between, I think, 250 to 300 people recently, I think there were around 20,000 applicants. That's correct. Between 2009 and 2013, there was the moratorium, but then in December 2013 there were 250, 300 positions and 20,000 people applied. There is huge interest out there for people who wish to join what is a very interesting and fulfilling job. A third method of increasing expertise and improving education within An Garda Síochána is by opening up the possibility of recruiting from other police forces. Now, I know we got Bob Olson from another jurisdiction. Similarly, there are very many other people who would like to come to Ireland to work in An Garda Síochána. Very many Irish men and women went out abroad and got jobs working in police forces abroad. Irrespective of whether they're Irish or not, people would like to come and join An Garda Síochána. We've heard political commentary about the fact that the next Garda Síochána may come from outside the jurisdiction, the next Garda Commissioner. If that's going to happen, we should be opening up the possibility that people who work as superintendents in Canada may be able to apply. And I know some Gardaí may say we don't want that, but we have to open up the force. We have to open it up so people from abroad can come in and bring in new ideas, because one of the legitimate criticisms that is made about An Garda Síochána is sometimes it looks too inwards. If you look at developments in other jurisdictions, like in some instances, England probably has gone a bit too far. In Britain in December 2012, a College of Policing was launched as a professional body to develop the knowledge, standards of conduct, leadership and professionalism required by the police force. It has produced some very interesting proposals in England. For instance, there's a requirement that there is a code of ethics which has been drafted by the College of Policing, and the code of ethics is to be viewed by serving officers as having the equivalent status of the Hippocratic Oath. So they are proposing issues in respect of that there be a code of ethics which must be complied with. One of the more controversial recommendations of the College of Policing, I don't agree with it, but it's something that we should be able to consider in this country. What they've proposed over there is that you'd have to have a degree in order to join the police. I don't think that's a good idea. I agree with the chairperson of the Police Federation in Britain, Steve White, when he said the majority of members he represents, even those that have a degree, are supportive of the view that you do not need a degree to be a good police officer. I agree with that. The last thing we want to turn An Garda Síochána into is a bookish, academic, Donish organisation that is excellent in the theory of policing and is completely ineffective in the practice of policing. But that does not mean that we should not try to improve expertise, education and training within the force. In Britain, it's also instructive to note that they do have a graduate recruitment training, not just graduate recruitment programme, not just within the Metropolitan Police, but within other police forces in England and Wales as well. The advantage of it is that you go in at constable level, but provided you perform satisfactorily and you can carry out the important functions of a police officer, you will get a faster track promotion into the area where your expertise is based. There's also a leadership programme which is available in England called the Police Now Graduate Leadership Development Programme. Running an organisation of the size of An Garda Síochána, which is 12,500, we hope it will get up to 15,000, but it is a huge management job that cannot simply rest on the shoulders of one individual. It must rest on the shoulders of the leaders within An Garda Síochána. In order to do that, they also, and I'm glad that most of them do, seek training in respect of leadership and management skills. I also just want to refer to the fact that I was pleased that Bob Olson was here, because I was looking at the Inspectorate's report, Changing Policing in Ireland, and some of the comments I've made have been replicated there when they talk about the recruitment process. So if I can conclude, and I see I'm coming up to 16 or 17 minutes, if I conclude by stating that we need to devote more resources in this country to two areas to improve our policing. One, we need more Gardaí on the ground in order to achieve the objectives set out by Judge Charlie Conroy all those years ago. Two, we need to place a greater emphasis on education and training. As policymakers, we need to do that, and in An Garda Síochána, they need to recognise the importance of that. People shouldn't be threatened by it. If we want to improve any organisation, if you want to improve any profession, you go for further training and education. This country has prospered because of our attitude and our regard for education, and we should replicate that within An Garda Síochána. There's huge education there. We as a state need to provide it with more education and more resources to improve the expertise within the force. Thank you very much.